becoming the legislative chair for Moms for Liberty Ohio. I'm a co-host of the podcast Royally Schooled. Has anybody here heard of Royally Schooled? You have? So guess what? You get a sticker. Yes. Yeah.
I just heard it now.
You just heard it? See? There you go. All right. Cool. And I also now serve as the state director for Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky for Heritage Action. Heritage Action is the grassroots partner of the Heritage Foundation. Who has heard of the Heritage Foundation? Oh, shoot. Okay. Until I run out. Boom, 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 boom. There's that, and then, hey, who wants to, yeah, you! Well, if I don't, I'll be in trouble. Okay, so, depending on who you ask, I'm either defending liberty or personally responsible for the collapse of public education. But first, I will tell you a little bit about Heritage. At Heritage Action, we work to equip everyday Americans to engage in the legislative process and advocate for policies that strengthen families, expand educational freedom, protect constitutional rights, secure our borders, restore fiscal responsibility, and preserve the liberties so that many Americans, sacrificed to give us. So I was initially going to obviously talk about, myself, my journey as a woman in America. My family has been here since the get. I have a lot of relatives that actually served in the Revolutionary War and every war since then. But when I think about America's 250th birthday, that has absolutely nothing to do with me. I wasn't there. I'm not the reason why we are the country that we are today. So I was getting dressed this morning and I picked this t-shirt, and I'll take my fancy jacket off, but this t-shirt holds the faces of the founding mothers of our country. And that's who I decided on my 2-hour car ride here today to talk about. So I literally wrote this speech in a matter of minutes, threw this PowerPoint together in the back parking lot. I'm not even kidding, because that's just how my life goes. But that's what we're going to talk about today. So as America celebrates 250 years of independence, we all know the big names, right? Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Hamilton, Adams, Madison. They're the rock stars of the Revolution, but we're going to talk today about the women who were changing history while somehow never making it into the movie, right? The founding mothers. But honestly, I don't really like that title because they were so much more than mothers. They were doing so much more than, baking bread on the sidelines and cheering everybody on. These women were spies. They were soldiers. They were writers, publishers, political strategists, organizers, and revolutionaries. And the one thing every single one of them understood is that liberty doesn't survive on autopilot. Every generation has to decide whether it's willing to fight for it. Now, when most people picture the Continental Congress, they imagine a room full of men in really ugly wigs debating independence. But imagine Abigail Adams writing to her husband John as the Continental Congress prepared to establish a new nation. She famously urged him to remember the ladies. That wasn't simply a request for recognition. It was a reminder that a free republic could never reach its full potential if it ignored half of its citizens. So while John Adams helped draft the framework of our government, Abigail managed their farm, raised their children, oversaw finances, and served as one of his close political advisors through hundreds of letters. She understood that freedom begins at home, that strong families create strong communities create strong nations, and those words still matter today. Freedom isn't built first in government buildings. It's built around dinner tables, it's built in homes, it's built by parents who teach virtue, responsibility, and faith to the next generation. And then there's Sybil Ludington. So Paul Revere gets all of the credit. Schoolhouse Rock makes songs about him. Everybody knows Paul Revere. Meanwhile, Sybil Ludington, at 16 years old, rode almost twice as far through rain, darkness, and British territory to alert her neighbors and loved ones that the British were on the way. And hardly anybody knows her name. She wasn't looking for recognition. She wasn't building a personal brand. She simply saw that her community needed someone, and she went. That's courage. Not waiting until you're comfortable, not waiting until you're qualified, not waiting until someone else steps up. Just going. And then we have Deborah Sampson. Now this woman, she literally was Mulan before Mulan was cool. She disguised herself as a man so she could fight in the Continental Army. And she was wounded. She reportedly removed a musket ball from her own leg rather than reveal who she was. And we have grown men afraid of killing spiders. Yeah, I know y'all are in here and you don't want to pull out your own splinters. This woman pulled out her own musket ball so she could still serve and protect her identity. It's all about perspective. Her story reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something else matters more than your fear. Mary Catherine Goddard, she may be one of my favorites. Last year, I had the honor of actually being nominated for the award in her name at the Moms for Liberty Summit. But she was the one that first printed the Declaration of Independence with every signer's name attached. Now imagine that. The British considered those names on that document treason. Basically, she looked at the most wanted list in America and printed it. That's bold. She understood something we desperately need today. Truth isn't always safe. Sometimes publishing the truth comes with consequences. But if nobody is willing to tell the truth, freedom doesn't stand much of a chance. Long before organized political activism became common, Penelope Barker showed what determined women could accomplish together. In 1774, she organized the Edenton Tea Party in North Carolina. 51 women signed a pledge to boycott British tea and goods. It became the first known organized political action by women in the American colonies. The British mocked them. Political cartoons ridiculed them. Apparently, getting mocked for standing up for your beliefs isn't exactly a new phenomenon. The methods might change, but human nature doesn't. But here's what I love, that they didn't stop just because people laughed. They kept going because they knew they were right. And they refused to be intimidated because they understood something timeless. When ordinary citizens unite around principle, they become impossible to ignore. Then there was Phyllis Wheatley, kidnapped from West Africa as a child and enslaved in Boston. She became one of America's earliest published poets. Despite unimaginable hardship, her writing spoke powerfully about liberty, faith, and human dignity. Even General George Washington admired her work. Her life reminds us that the ideals expressed in the Declaration, that all people are created equal, were powerful enough to inspire those who had been denied those very rights. Her words challenged America to become more faithful to its own founding principles. And finally, we have Mercy Otis Warren. If Samuel Adams was called the father of the Revolution, Mercy might rightly be called its historian. The reason why we know so much about what happened in the Revolutionary War is because of this woman. She wrote political essays, satirical plays, and pamphlets encouraging resistance to British tyranny. After independence, she documented the history of the revolution itself, ensuring future generations would understand what had been sacrificed to secure liberty. She also reminded Americans that liberty isn't guaranteed simply because a revolution has been won. It must be protected from corruption, from complacency, and from the slow erosion of self-government. That warning remains just as relevant 250 years later. We have to stop assuming someone else is going to take care of it. Sometimes after speaking at a school board meeting, people ask me, how do you handle all of the criticism? I began to imagine reading some of the tweets to Abigail Adams, or news articles to Penelope Barker, or Facebook comments to Mercy Otis Warren. And I think they'd laugh. And then I think they would tell us to stop worrying so much about what other people think. Because none of them waited for permission. None of them waited until everyone agreed with them. None of them waited until standing for truth became popular. They simply did what was right. And that's really the lesson that they leave us. Every one of them used what God gave them. Abigail wrote, Sybil wrote, Deborah fought. Mary published, Penelope organized, Phyllis inspired, Mercy documented. Different gifts, same mission. I was having a conversation about this with a friend of mine, and she inspired me to really think about why a lot of activists do what we do and how we keep going. And we talked about, the story that's often told about Benjamin Franklin as he left the Constitutional Convention in 1787. And a woman asked him, "Yo, Benji, what kind of government did y'all just give us?" And his response has echoed through American history. A republic, if you can keep it. And I've always found it interesting that he didn't just say, "I've given you a republic," and then went on to, invent something else. But he said, if you can keep it. And think about the word keep for a moment. What does it mean to keep something? You don't keep something by just admiring it. And you don't keep something by assuming someone else will take care of it. You don't keep something by neglecting it. You keep something by protecting it, by maintaining it, by tending to it, by defending it when it's threatened, and preserving it for the next person who will inherit it. Do you plant a garden and just hope for the best and assume someone else is going to come by and water it? Do you drive a car or buy a house and believe it will last forever without maintenance? We understand this in every other aspect of life. You keep a marriage by investing in it. You keep a friendship by nurturing it. You keep a home by maintaining it. Why would a republic be any different? Benjamin Franklin and the women I just spoke about understood that freedom isn't self-sustaining. A constitutional republic doesn't survive because it's written on parchment. It survives because each generation chooses to preserve it. That responsibility belonged to our founders. It belonged to the founding mothers, and now it belongs to us. So as we celebrate America's 250th birthday, the question isn't whether we'll ever be called to defend liberty. We already have been. We're at a point now, you guys, where we're having to write legislation for common sense. And in our party, we want less government. We don't need more laws, but yet we're having to write laws for common sense reasons. What are we going to do with our turn? Because history has a funny way of repeating itself. Every generation believes someone else will preserve freedom until suddenly it's their responsibility. 250 years ago, ordinary people made extraordinary decisions. And not because they knew that they would end up in history books, but because they believed their children deserved freedom. And now it's our turn. So my prayer is that future generations will look back at us, not because we're famous and we wear sparkly jackets, not because we're perfect, but because when liberty needed defending, we showed up. And that's all I got. Thank you guys.